Okay, it's 6:30. Welcome to the December 16th Select Board meeting. All the Select Board members and the town manager and town treasurer are present. So let's begin with the pledge of allegiance. The flag is in the back. The pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do any board members have additional business not included on the published agenda that they'd like us to consider? Okay. One item that's not on the agenda is recently Doug Stevenson indicated that he wanted to give the board a brief update on the Androscoggin Lake efforts, because they're going to be, I guess, advertising for some committee members. And if there's no objection, I would turn the floor over to him at this time. So if he wants to leave, he may.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that. You did tell me that I could come back when I had something to say. And I have 4 things to say. First of all, we intend this to be a very collaborative effort. So you see that through the work that we're doing, that we want to get as many people from a different perspectives as we can to help focus on the solutions of the lake. But these are the 4 things that I wanted to mention. First of all, we are forming, actually, we're reconducting the same briefing that we had here in Wayne back in November. Will be held in Leeds on January 16th. Same topics, same, not even the same presenters, but basically to bring the folks in Leeds up to the same level of information that we have here. Second is that sort of in the format that we've been talking before of the organization of this effort, we intend to have a 8-person advisory coordinating committee representing as many, 8 only, but representing as many parts of this problem as we can. So there'll be 1 lake owner, 1 lake user from Wayne and Leeds, somebody from both ALEC and 30 Mile River, because they're the drivers of the basic work. And then a couple other people who have no connection to the lake, which is pretty hard to find, but somebody who has no real interest in the lake as an owner or user, but is interested in how it would affect the rest of the community. So those are the 8. Now, below the 8, we intend to have work groups, as many as 10, but basically work groups focused on very specific topics. So we can populate this with as many people. So it might be 1 on chemistry, 1 on hydrology, 1 on ordinances, 1 on communications, 1 on data and data. By the way, data, she's not here, but we've created the first job description of data miner for Betsy, who does an amazing job digging out really cool information. The third, so the real reason I'm here is there's an article about this in the Messenger on January 1st, and I didn't want you to read about this in the Messenger. This is too important and you're too involved in it. So I want to make sure that you all heard it here first, that this effort is moving forward. We are in the process of engaging engineers and consultants for the purposes of mapping out the data sampling of the lake. That's a very specific scientific effort that needs to be done. So we know exactly what the issue is and where the issue is in the lake. It could be that it's not all in the same place. So that will be going on. We want to get them going soon so that when the ice goes out, they can get started and we can do this work over the course of a couple of different seasons and actually show progress. That's the most important thing here, to keep momentum going. There will be a little bit of we're looking for a little bit of funding going into the first part of the year, but then there is a grant opportunity in March that we're aiming for too. That's a significant grant, so that will help move this along. And the final thing I would say is just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the day before, maybe, DEP came out with a lakes rating scheme. I don't know if you've seen it, but these are the charts. I'm not going to go through it, but these are the charts for Androscoggin Lake and Pocasset. There's one of these for every lake in Maine and all the ones in Wayne, but you can see the difference between the quality of somebody's assessment of the quality of Androscoggin is almost all red in all the sectors, and Pocasset, which has a couple of reds, but basically it's got some really nice blue, which means good, and some yellow, which means there's some issues going on. There is a table of what all these different things mean and what the metrics are and why they turn red and blue and green, but it's yellow. But I just wanted to point that out to you, and I'm happy for questions, but I thank you for your time.
Select board members, any questions for Doug? Where's that table?
Where's the table? Lakes.com?
Lakesofmaine.org.
Who do you anticipate working on the grant? Is that something that'll go through 30 Mile or will?
Probably through, they're well positioned for grants like that, yes, I think so.
That's great.
So the funding, we're trying to run both, the Balak has its own appeals and it appeals to people, and we're running through 30 Mile River, so it looks like it's kind of weird having two places, but we're all working together.
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
Okay, you're welcome, thank you. Thank you for letting me go first.
And you don't have to leave, you can stay if you want.
Oh,
It's really, it's really good stuff.
I got something.
Okay. Consider, well, we asked, do any board members have conflicts with any of tonight's business? Nope, no conflicts. Consider approving the board minutes for December 4th, 2025. Has everyone had an opportunity to look those over? Yep.
I'll move we approve the minutes for December 4th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Item 7, warrants and donations, payroll number 21. Anything special about that to tell us, Shannon? Motion from anyone?
Move to approve the minutes for the payroll number 21 in the amount of $10,974.64.
Can you correct the payroll number? I'm sorry,
Payroll number
I'm on the
21.
wrong page.
Am I okay?
You're okay.
Okay.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Do you have anything, Shannon, to tell us about the accounts payable warrant number 22?
So there's, I mean, it's all pretty standard. The only thing that was different would be the Jonathan Farrar for $150. So that was just a reimbursement for a building permit that we actually go through to the planning board. Other than that, standard, regional school district and secretary of state.
Motion from anyone?
Move we approve accounts payable number 22 in the amount of $309,406.02.
Second.
For discussion? All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Consider accepting donations, for Lad Center programs. Anyone like to make a motion on that?
Move. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, consider accepting donations in the amount of $1,200 to supplement the existing appropriation for Lad Recreation Center programs.
Second.
Are you moving to accept it?
Yes, he is. Any discussion by board members? Okay. Public discussion? All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, old business, review and discuss draft board and committee members' appointment policy revisions. I propose a conclusion to section 5. Which was the appointment for advisory and ceremonial boards. That's the only thing that has, that's the only thing that's different about this from what we've looked at in the past. I guess I'll just open it up for discussion. Is section 5, is there anything we want to do about it? And anything else we need to do about our policy? I don't see it. I don't see a section 5.
I don't have section 5. Everything to section 5.
Everything but
It's in the
section 5. Well, take it from me. Section 5 is damn good.
Yeah.
I read section
But-
5.
Okay,
Did
but,
you want to change something?
well, no, but if we don't have it here, maybe it needs to be tabled until next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mary Ann,
Third
based on
party.
your reading, did you have anything to?
No, I was really pleased that there seemed to be a good conclusion. It seemed to wrap it up and it didn't seem to over formalize it.
Okay, one thing came up on and you might want to think about this over the next 3 weeks for when we come back with a section 5 in our packet. Today at a meeting, an issue was raised on whether board members of a certain board need to be town voters or not. And I would suggest that that's not in the policy, the appointment policy. And I don't believe it's in there. If it is, I missed it, and that would be kind of bad, because I wrote most of it. But I think that should probably, requirements for residency for members probably is something that we ought to put in charges for the boards, when we're charging a board, or if it's a board that's appointed by ordinance, that would be in the ordinance. Does anybody think we should have something in the appointment policy about board members having to be residents? Because it seems in some boards, we might want them to, like the planning board. And in other boards, like the roads committee, if you have a part-time resident who is, a civil engineer and knows everything about roads, you would want that person on the committee, I think. So.
I would suggest that in this policy, we have a statement that says residency will be addressed in each of the individual board
Okay,
charters.
what we did have in here somewhere is that to the extent, it's right in the first paragraph, to the extent any statute, ordinance, or select board resolution establishing or changing a board, committee, or commission includes specific provisions for appointing members that differs from this policy, those explicit appointment provisions shall take precedence. Do you think that's good enough, or do you want to put okay?
I would amp it up a little bit and be explicit that residency will be considered in each board
Okay,
charter.
Charter.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's important, certainly not to
okay,
exclude non-residents or
Yes,
non-taxpayers.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So specific provisions, comma. For example, town residency, is that enough? For appointing members that differ from this policy, those explicit appointment provisions shall take precedence. If that's the
You're
only-
suggesting we do
or
this a little
establishing,
different.
charging a board, okay, to extend any provisions for appointing members. Provisions requiring residency or for appointing members. Is that okay? In line number 8,
Thank you.
Yeah.
board, committee, or commissions include specific provisions regarding residency or for appointing. Is that okay?
Mhm.
We'll add that in there.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Add
Thank you,
three
Tom.
months rather than-
Okay, we'll make that change and we'll put it in paragraph 5 next time. And it's tabled until then. 8B, 100 acre wood update.
Is there any opportunity for public comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted, this is Paul Intercession. I noticed that there's a lot of this policy, I read through it because I was coming tonight.
Uh-huh.
I thought, why not read it
Mhm.
through? I noticed there is a lot of new administrative responsibilities that come with this new policy, and a lot of it seems to happen right before the town meeting. That there'll be a lot of responsibilities that the town manager will have to do. And the question that came to mind for me, it's just a question that I have that would be useful for consideration. Is the timing of those responsibilities perhaps bill time right before all of the responsibilities that have to be attended to before town meeting? That's the question I pose.
So we did consider timing, and we
Mhm.
actually, when we looked at the way things were written and done previously. There was quite a bit of a scramble in the month of June itself. So as we looked at some of these responsibilities, and a lot of them definitely are Shannon's responsibilities. We actually tried to move some of those dates forward into, okay, so make sure we're thinking about this in March and April so that we can get
Yeah.
postings for positions that are retiring, right? We can have candidates identified, making sure we've got that done in May, right? So these folks can politic or whatever is gonna happen in the different rules for the different boards and committees, and that can then be done in the month of June before the town meeting. So I don't know how much farther we would push it into February and March. I think talking about it now gives us an awareness and we've talked about it so much, I don't think any of us are gonna forget. And we are trying to codify it so that people who are following us in these roles have some guidelines to go.
And,
It's a legitimate concern.
yeah, and I don't know that there's a sweet spot in there, on when to do this, Paul, but the way we have been doing business, the first of the year comes and nobody's appointed to anything.
Yeah.
And one of our goals was to get everybody appointed who supposedly starts their job on July first, to have that done by the end of June. And so we set timeframes, or tried to set timeframes that are close enough where there's interest. You know, I guess we could start the previous July and ask who wants to serve next June, but we want to get it close enough to when the trigger needs to be pulled, but far enough back to let us have some process and get it all done by the end of July.
Yeah, if July is the start date, I guess. And I did notice that some of the actions happen in March and April.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I
it's good
think
as long as we
especially,
put it all through.
especially with Shannon, and you have to think about people who might follow her in that role years and years from now, when she might move on. But a lot of it's pretty much, it's templated, right? Because we're going to know in advance which individuals' roles are expiring, and the terms, and a lot of it is pretty repetitive and templated. And if we get the website updated as well and try to automate some things, so I think we'll be okay.
That was our goal.
Yeah.
You know, we're gonna be talking about it some more when we have a complete document next meeting. So read it over, and if public has some input, come then. And also, if you've got some input, you can write us before then, so we have a chance to think about it ahead of time. 100 acre wood update.
Yeah, so this past week I got a lot of great help from some residents that came into the office and pawed through boxes upon boxes of historical documents to see if we had anything predating our Trio software. It only goes back to 2020. And so I also reached out to our attorney, and so I got a list, and it's included in your packets. The Conservation Commission will be presenting a fundraising plan, and with some question marks in there for certain amounts. You'll see under a vendor detail report, there's a list there, and in the final page, there's a very similar list that was provided by our attorneys of different case matters that they had, and there were 4 columns there. So basically, when you look at the vendor detail report, that's a list of all the Pettingill tax acquired property matters, the 100 acre wood property matter, 100 acre wood build the general matter, and Pettingill build the general matter. On the far left under dates and invoices, those are all the documents that I actually have in hand. And then with the certain checks or that I received from the attorney with the invoices. And so if there's a blank there, I just have to go back and review it. And you'll notice down at the bottom under the total amount, for our total amount, it comes out to 50,429. Their total amount came out to 48,911. So I've got to go back and do some reconciliation with a little bit more time and just go through all of that and see what the differences were between the invoices. There were some things, like a couple numbers that might have been flip-flopped in their reporting, and a couple of invoices that I might be missing that they included, and vice versa. We've got down the parking lot and the boulders listed down under there. There were some prints and copies, and then under Mainland Development Consultants, there includes the survey and some multiple surveys for the boundaries, and then finally the appraisal. Now, since we just approved the warrant, that's on there as well. So you'll look at the overall cost so far, comes out to, again, this is a draft of $80,068.15. Henry came into the office and worked with Lynn, our treasurer, on the taxes owed with a through date of October 31st. And that's looking at both taxes and interest for a total of $168,118. And that number has been passed on to the Pettingill's attorney at this time. Overall, looking at the combined taxes, interest, and costs, we're looking at about $248,186. And to note, the appraisal came back with a $515,000 mark. So. So once we kind of get some more confirmation on some of the reconciliations on there, I'll report back to you on that. I don't know if you want to turn it over to the Conservation Commission to talk about the fundraising plan.
Sure, would you like to address that? Conservation Commission?
Yes, I wasn't clear that this was gonna happen tonight.
Well, it doesn't
But
have.
I'll give you the best. So again, I submitted a draft to Shannon of the fundraising plan that we've started with, which of course has amendments that will happen to it with dates and amounts and stuff that we didn't know at the time. And, I don't know if you dispersed the draft, yeah, so you all have the draft. And you can read it through. Basically, it describes our goal, the methods we hope to take, which are expanding. We're looking at some grants and some other stuff that I didn't have at the time this was written. A vague timeline, how record keeping, which would happen in the town office, would happen, things that need to be set up for the fundraising to happen, like bank accounts or other accounts. I'm not sure what they all are. We need to figure that out at the town office. And, you can read it, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And if that's what I can tell you with it, unless you read it. Or taking a look at it. Does anybody have any questions at the moment?
Any questions on any of the costs?
Do you have any estimate, pardon me, as to how much you might be able to raise, given what you might know about concerned individuals at this point?
So we have rough ideas. We have been talking to some people, but without totals amounts of we didn't have the appraisal at the time. And we didn't have the costs at the time. So everything is very rough. So I've given to anybody I've talked to a rough
Pardon me?
amount that we'll be looking for. So it's hard. Nobody's committed anything at this point because they want to know what the amount is. So yes, we're just talking to people that collect positive feedback. That's as much as I can give you at the moment.
The goal would be to raise the entire amount.
Right,
Right.
100%.
No,
That's what I'm saying.
the minus the 240.
Yeah, so like 270-ish, maybe. So. And of course, I'm assuming that, the lawyers will have work to do to arrive at whatever that amount is too. So it's hard to, we don't have I don't have a full set of information
Right.
to give any more information than I've given in this draft outline, which is broad. But it,
Understand, it's all very ballpark at this point.
does that make sense?
Yes, certainly.
I would suggest that sometime in the next 3 weeks before the next meeting, we should talk to Phil, our lawyer. And ask some questions like, for example, do you advise reaching an agreement with Pettingills regarding these costs before we proceed forward? Because our number, I mean, is subject to challenge. And so that's a question for the lawyers. Is this something that we should try to reach agreement on? Or if not, what about it? What do we? A question for the lawyers is, what do we tell the town and the decisions the town needs to make respecting the $248,000? If our estimate is good and those costs are all valid, the Conservation Commission could raise the rest, which would be great. The town is still faced with the choice of, do you want to not get the $248,000? Now, that choice was made several years ago when they decided to keep it for conservation purposes. The town looked at that, but that was under different circumstances. That was when they were looking at taxes due of $40,000, and maybe maybe some action needs to be taken, maybe not. I think we should ask our lawyers about that and take their advice and see what they have to say. That's all. Yeah, and I think we could do that in the next 3 weeks, so we would have their input before a meeting.
Also request if that happens, that a member of the conservation, like Ken or I, specifically be
Yeah.
involved in that discussion, because just because we have besides that part of the conversation, we have a pretty full set of information.
Sure.
And could be helpful in the discussion.
I wouldn't have any problem with that. I don't know, about anybody else. Also, if everybody in the board wanted to be involved in it, we could set it up and make it a work session. It would be executive session since it's consulting with our lawyer, I believe. But, we could do that. And I believe a conservation commission person could participate in that based on the status of the commission and their involvement in the management of the property.
I mean, and the town does hold some part, because it does have a deed to the property, correct? I mean, that is a positive in our holding. Legally, we own the property, correct?
Well, legally, we own the property subject to providing the prior owners with just compensation to avoid a taking that violates the Constitution. Huh?
Didn't we, in the title, give us some standing and all that? No?
It didn't have anything to do with the paying money.
Yeah.
Really, it doesn't.
I understand
Yeah.
that. Right.
But I'd say ask them and then follow their advice would be my.
Yeah.
Deal.
Yeah, so, and if anybody gets a chance to look at the fundraising plan and they have any thoughts or suggestions, I'm more than happy to hear it. It is a working document that we will get to a final one, hopefully before we start fundraising.
Also, something that I would suggest the Conservation Commission may want to think about is, we've kind of talked about this in the past, and we have talked to our lawyer, and you might want to set something up for ongoing fundraising activity. And if you wanted to do that, that would be something to consider for an ordinance to go to the next town meeting. That basically would put into place a procedure for the Conservation Commission to perform fundraising activities for whatever, because the statute allows you to do that.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, anything else from the board? Anything else from the public? Let's review and discuss proposed revisions to the Town of Blaine financial policy. Now, I'm going to confess that I didn't read last week's minutes until I was just sitting here. And I see that it says Hazel and I were supposed to do something about this in the minutes, but I don't know what that was. And so I haven't done it.
I went back and incorporated the changes that you had
Okay.
requested, and I
Okay,
sent it
okay.
over to Lynn.
Okay.
So Lynn has put in her recommendations, to, this. And so I think she's gonna go through it. You had specifically requested talking about the fund balance policy. You had specifically requested adding in, a portion about the town manager, in the case of cash handling, cash management. And then there was also one other portion,
On the fixed asset accounting
yeah,
policy.
that you asked us to reach out to our auditor, so Lynn did reach out to the auditor.
Yeah.
And can kind of speak to that, and then also added in some other language, some defining terms in here, so. The estimated useful lives was from the auditor, and then I'll let you go through it if you want.
So you have the floor, Lynn.
Okay, so if we start with section 1 under the financial management accounting system. The B and C, those changes there is just really in order of progress for me. It really didn't change anything, it was just moving things around. So in terms of the request of getting the town manager, a provision for that. Under section 2 of, part 2 of section 1, front counter procedures, I did add something in there. Where, it would just be a changeover of a cash drawer versus, having to close something out. So in other words, if 2 people were there that day, it would be a matter of if Shannon had to step in, you know, counting the drawer, just to make sure that there's accountability for that. So I did put a provision. in.
I saw that, yep.
Okay. Were there any questions on any bit of that? Okay. So then. So if we look at section 3, the investment policy, I added part 3, some definitions. I think we had some,
What page is that on?
so this is on page 9. So line 237. So I wanted to define some things that were coming up. So that way everybody had an understanding of what at least my understanding of these terms were. So sufficient liquidity, investment risk constraints, and cash flow characteristics. If you've had a chance to read through any of that. And if you had any questions, it's just really trying to give us a guideline of what to use for those benchmarks.
On 3A, sufficiently liquid. Could you maybe put that in? Give me a more simpler explanation of what it's saying.
So, yeah, so sufficiently liquid, I mean, that, it's one of those terms, it's how do you define what is sufficiently liquid? And in my mind, we need to have the terminology of, you know, say, 2 months expenditures. Is so if you're making investments, you have to have at least that to be able to invest anything beyond that.
Okay,
So as long as that remains as free cash in the bank, anything beyond that could be invested. So
So-
sufficiently liquid, that would, in my mind, that would be.
so does this mean that, let's say I have my money in the bank, and then I take away from that all my committed funds, like the road reserve, this special fund, that special fund, right? And when I take those, that's going to give me an uncommitted cash balance, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are you saying that we can't invest anything unless that balance is at least as high as our minimum reserve?
So I believe that, yeah, okay, so there should be benchmarks and then there's gonna be an exception to a benchmark. So if, say, for instance, we're in July
Mhm.
and we know that we've got 3 months where liquidity is gonna be so tight, I'm not investing anything until after that point. And if after that point, I could say, well, if I have 2 months expenditures or
Mhm.
your uncommitted balance, I still know that I've got at least 6 months before I need to be concerned. So there's gonna be exceptions too. And I tried to match it to where we were going with what the fund balance should be.
And again, I'm not picking at this, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
But let's take the road reserve, for example.
Yep.
Okay, right now, there will be no cash. The road reserve isn't gonna be hit up for any cash until the spring.
Right.
Would you agree?
Yes,
So it seems to me that would be prime money for a 2 or 3 month CD. Regardless of what the uncommitted reserve is. Does that make any sense or am I missing something?
yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so would our
But
cash,
if that's the only amount of money that we have left is a road reserve.
Yeah.
And then everything else is, say, expended,
Mhm.
then no, I'm not gonna invest that.
no, I understand. But if all we're talking about is excess, if we're only talking about investing excess uncommitted reserve,
Yes,
then we've already excluded from investment all the committed
yes,
monies.
correct.
And maybe there should be flexibility to invest some of those committed monies that we know we're not going to need in the short term.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can do that with what you've written here. That would be
I
okay.
believe so.
Okay, that's good.
I believe
This
so.
way, when we talk about like having 2 months worth of expenses. I folded my arms right away with that in mind, that 2 months when it's a low monthly cost situation. Doesn't mean anything, compared to twice a year when we've got the significant bumps, right?
Right.
So, okay, so you've got to be playing 3D chess.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, uncommitted and committed. The 2 months is fine as long as as committed is removed from the equation when 2 months is making sense. Gotcha.
So the only thing I picked up on, Lynn, outside of this, like, conversation is the cross-reference on maximum maturities defined in section 11 is actually section 12.
I was looking for that. And I thought,
Okay,
thanks.
Thank you.
Thought it was me.
it's not me.
That's easy deal.
Thank you. All right, any other questions in terms of those definitions? No, okay. All right, I did just add some clarity under, if you go to line 310, authorized and suitable investments. I did add money market accounts to that. I also redefined it, category 1 investments, it's actually level 1 investments. That's just, it's more of a proper definition of how the investments are. And I also added the NCUA, which is the credit union's equivalency of the FDIC. So I think both should be considered.
Good.
All right. All right, so if we look at investment program management, line 325, I added in there. I think, what was I doing with that one? Yeah, the cash flow analysis. I want to say there was something in there in terms of when it was supposed to be provided. And it just seemed like, okay, I don't want to just provide a cash flow analysis in January for budget. I think it just needs to be something that is provided on a more ongoing basis.
Yeah.
All right, and in addition to that, you can agree or not to this, but I also think that anytime I think an investment should be made, that I should be at least able to provide you with proof that we have sufficient liquidity.
So back up a
Yep.
little bit. So the highlight around line 337, to 341. Does that section get deleted?
Yeah, I moved that. So move that section to fund balance discussion. So when we talk about the fund balance, that one paragraph is the one that just, for me, felt like it was budgetary. So if we move it under the fund balance section, it belongs, it's more of a budgetary item at that point. So I'm not eliminating it altogether. I've just added that one goes ongoing.
You moved it to page 19.
Page
Okay.
19.
So the highlighted
Yeah.
highlighted language will not be on page 12, but will be on page 19?
Yes.
Okay.
Line 550. That's right. Yep.
And then the next section, was there anything else before that? Before I move on? Okay. The next section is the fixed asset policy. And again, like Shannon mentioned, I did reach out to the auditors. I had them look over the section, so they made some recommendations in terms of increasing some of the limits to like machinery and equipment, buildings, and that's just based off of what they're seeing. You know, the normal increases have been. So it's just standard. And I also increased or added a table in here, which is in every audit report as far as what the useful lives of each category. That's just typical. We also added in here, infrastructure. Infrastructure meaning basically like roads and bridges. So that's on line 427. So the way that we have to think about infrastructure is we already have assigned values to all of our fixed assets, right? So the roads already have a value. So the more than 250,000 that we've put here are, it would almost be if we were to do new roads or adopt. Thank you. Adopt new roads, so that it's not repair and maintenance. They're adding to a value or to what we already have in place. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Just question that. What's your thought, Hazel?
You don't. No, okay, I'm going to spit it out. So when you talk about infrastructure.
Yeah.
Assets, do we have any infrastructure assets other than roads, bridges and utility systems?
Dams.
Okay, then can you change that to an EG, not an IE?
No, I like that. EG's, right.
No, that's not nitpicking, it's perfect.
That's,
Yes.
that's
Well,
appropriate.
it's sort of like,
In other
we
words,
can
with-
change it to sort of like,
Like,
yeah, that's better.
Okay, so the next section, which I feel I have more changes into, was the fund balance section, section 5, so line 484. So everything that was in the policy before is obviously old and outdated. Old numbers, old calculations. So I believe the last meeting that I had with you in terms of financial update, I gave you a calculation with 3 different ways that we could calculate how the fund balance comes about. And I'll show you the calculation again when we get to the financial section, but there's 3 ways that we can do it. It's either, what the town had previously adopted, what MMA recommends, and they have 3 tiers within that. And then what, I believe it's the government accounting method of calculating a fund balance. So there's 3 different ways. They're all fairly similar. I'm recommending that we take the median of the MMA calculation. And again, I have that in our packet when we get to the financial section. So you'll see how each one of the calculations are. But that would be the threshold that we would use for the end of the year. I use it looking at each month in terms of what cash flow should be, and it's basically, 2 months expenses. And that's based off of the previous year. So that's, yes, ma'am.
So over time, this is gonna age.
Yep. And that's why I have in here that we will look at this on an annual basis.
But
I was wondering whether there's a way, instead of putting a static date in of FY 2025, is there a way to put a reference in so that you don't have to keep coming back and changing that date? It's on line 499.
499.
And I don't know if there's a way to handle that more gracefully than actually put in a hard date in.
Mhm. So, I mean, that just references what the current policy is right now. Through that period.
Yeah,
But
all they're
that's
saying
gonna-
is that our current policy, yeah, that has, the FY 2025 really is, she does have, you're right, Hazel, and she does have a floating deal. She didn't put a set amount or a year. It is these percentages and these months of expenditures of whatever year we happen to be dealing with.
Which is what you are
Which is-
recommending.
Which is what, yes,
Right.
yes.
Not that, but.
So I'm saying she
that-
does have a floating. This FY 25, she's just telling us, well, here's the current policy. It was in effect through FY 2025. And it's 25% of total appropriations, which we would never, ever meet, because that would be like an uncommitted
Lots of
reserve of
money.
$1.4 million or something like that. So I think it does float. It doesn't, her standards, her new policy is not tied to any particular year. It's talking about the 2-month averages of the most recent 6-month period ended. So it's a floating deal. You look at the last 6 months and the next 6 months from wherever you happen to be sitting.
Well, is it
that
necessary
correct?
to even say this,
Yes,
this sentence?
What, about the 2025?
Yeah.
Well, you could leave out the 2025 if it's a policy. She could just say,
Yeah, I
that,
could just.
yeah, the town's current policy recommends.
Yeah.
3 months or 25%.
I thought you were suggesting in this paragraph, I thought you were suggesting that we were going to rewrite the paragraph based on the method that you,
So that's where
Recommended.
section 3 under here, that's the actual method that I've recommended
okay,
Yeah.
for the calculation going forward. So that would be the policy.
I think.
No, 5 years from now, it's
Yeah.
not gonna matter what the policy was back in 2025.
Well, right. I think it's okay. I think if, I think if you wanna, if anyone is afraid that there might be confusion, you should say, the current policy in effect, or the current policy that was in effect through FY 2025, I guess that makes sense, was 3 months expenditures or 25%. The revised policy is based on MMA recommendations, there's, but
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's okay the way it is.
I guess I'm just wondering why we even have to reference the policy that we are leaving
I
behind.
think she's just explaining.
It's
It
just.
used to be 25%, but now we're changing it, and here's how we changed it. There's these 3 methods
Right,
recommended.
it's just a determination of, here are the 3 options that we're given to choose from. One happened to be the policy that we have had thus far, then MMA, then the GFAO. So,
So this is just kind of historical background.
it's just kind of like, here's the 3 options, and
Yep.
then next is what we're
Right.
adopting for a
Yeah.
policy.
Do we need to even have that in there?
You don't have to.
Yeah.
And if it's a problem, it could be taken out. I understand what you're doing, and she's just saying, here's the things we could do. And then it goes on and said, okay, here's what we're doing.
I take that as an explanatory for us. And then I believe in your
And for anybody to
recommendation.
go forward. I mean. To understand, where the.
Do whatever you want.
It's. I'd leave it, I'd say it's been good so far.
Yeah.
I'd leave it up to Lynn if you feel strongly that that helps. I don't think it hurts anything, and I don't think it's misleading,
That's fine.
but,
Nothing even-
that's just my opinion.
Agree.
So someone's gonna look at that and catch FY 25, someone's gonna follow you. And be in the role, but they're gonna say, I better take a look at this. We're gonna count on someone being smart enough to say, I wonder if this is still relevant today, or if I need to relook at the formula.
Well, and I've given them the formula of what the town policy was previously.
You've given them a formula based upon a look back from this point in time. But 10 years from now, somebody might look at it and there's gonna be a different calculation they might make.
Maybe leave it out. I don't think it's necessary. Would you agree that it's not necessary?
It does not have to be in,
Okay, and
does not have.
it's enough people have questioned it that I have to assume other people are gonna question it in the future. So maybe if it's not necessary, maybe we could leave it out. I
Okay.
don't think it would hurt anything,
Okay,
and it's generating a lot of questions.
All right.
Is that okay?
yeah, that's fine with me.
I don't know how long we want to spend on this. But the other way, if you do want to leave it in, is I'd remove the word current. Because then the 3 options are, one is the 3 months expenditures, which is the FY 25 policy.
Right.
Strike current. But I'd let you handle, however you want to handle it. It's just, how many times we want to answer the question?
Okay.
Okay.
So then on to the actual policy that I've recommended.
Okay, now,
Okay,
I have one thing to interject.
Yep.
Okay, we'll go on to the policy that you recommend. Talk about the policy you recommended, because it's in there. So, but
okay. Okay, so, and I just wrote it to where we've already adopted it. So it's the median of the three options that MMA recommends for calculations. So one is the 10 to 12% total tax commitment. B is the 2 months average expenditures, and C is the highest expenditures month. So I went with the median, and again, I've got the calculation, we can all take a look at it. But the highest expenditure is always going to be July, because that's when the appropriations get booked.
Mm.
Okay, so
Oh.
it's an unrealistic expenditure. What?
Do you think that's really what they meant? Do you think they meant that that doesn't include the amount that's appropriated to all the reserve accounts? Because they get booked.
Well,
in-
because it gets booked as an expenditure.
Yeah, but I don't,
Yeah,
okay, maybe, Lynn, but I don't think
Yeah.
that's what they're talking about. I think that when you talk about cash flow, that can't be what they mean.
Right. But there's, yeah.
But, you know, and so I would say the highest month is gonna be the month that the county tax and the school, that you have a county tax payment and you also have your RSU payment. That's probably gonna be the high month.
Yeah.
Would be my guess. But anyway, okay.
And which is, it's usually early.
But if you're, and you're taking the median, so it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. You're not taking the mean. Okay,
Right.
so that's fine. Put it in there. It's just a throwaway. It's always gonna be a throwaway. All right.
Yeah. So, yeah, so just so everybody has the idea of what the three are, but I've given no hard numbers. So that way it doesn't have to be a policy that gets
Mhm.
updated every single time.
And
Just a formula.
Yep.
And on 533 and 534, if we put that in our policy, which I think it should be, it's good. But we have to make sure that we do it.
Yeah.
That the actual, there's an action that indicates that the select board reviewed this on an annual basis and said, yes, that's what we want to continue doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we've had a tendency in the past to put stuff like that in and then never ever do it.
When would that be done in the year? Which may show that I really understand all.
So I would say it
As
would
well
need
as
to be
English.
done that first treasurer's meeting, simply because the calculation is through the end of the year.
Okay,
So we'll have at least have had the opportunity to flush everything out for the previous fiscal year.
so we do it early in the year, early in the
Fiscal
fiscal year,
year,
early
right.
in our meet.
Here's
So-
the,
meeting.
here's the only question on that,
Yeah.
okay? The only time we can address taking action on changing the reserve amount,
Yeah,
increasing our reserves, is in the budget process.
right.
And so you might want to think about whether we ought to look at this
Mhm.
before,
Yeah, like now.
yeah, like now.
Okay.
But only because that's the only time you can do anything to affect it,
Right,
is in the budget.
okay.
Yeah. That's important.
Are you suggesting around 533, 534?
Put a time in there.
Pin
Well, that's what I
prior
was
to the budget
wondering.
process,
Mhm,
Mhm.
Yeah,
and actually use those words.
I think that would be fine.
Yeah. That was kind of my point too. Thank you.
Mhm. I believe, yeah, that is really the end of the changes that I have.
There was a lot of wording in there and numbers that I'm glad to see gone.
Yeah, they're a little old.
And way too specific. A little old.
Yeah.
Thanks for all the work on it.
A question on the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think maybe, are you going to pitch to us, a banking arrangement where they come and pick up our cash?
Mhm.
Does that jive with what we have in the current policy? Just if it doesn't, can you make it?
As I want to say that, I know it was a consideration, I'll make sure that I actually got it on a piece of paper.
Okay,
I thought I did.
I don't know, is there anything that says like we have to go to the bank on a daily basis or whenever
So there is a
There is,
portion in
yeah.
here that does say when
Yeah,
we should theoretically be making a bank deposit.
I
okay.
thought I remembered
You-
seeing it.
I think
When
as
it hits
you,
25.
when you explain this program, if everybody likes it, maybe you need to make sure that it comports with the policy on making cash deposits,
Yep.
okay? Is there anything else on the policy that you need to tell us about?
Do not.
I like it. I think it's good. Thank you very much for that work.
Yeah, it's important to get this right. 2013, 2015.
Is there something by the way of, an alarm clock or a memory stick somehow, somewhere in there that'll tell us, oh, you are supposed to review the cash flow. It'd be neat to go through all of these things and just come up with, add a little calendar.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the alarm clock's name is Shannon.
We'll add it to the calendar.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, number 9, item 9A, continuing on the roll. Bill Lynn, Treasurer's Quarterly Update.
Okay. So I'm gonna take us a little out of order. So the first thing, you should have 3 different sets of information from me. The first one I want to talk about is, it starts with the delinquent tax process date. This refers to 2023 taxes, the tax year. And what we're looking at currently for the next step in the process. So right now, we're past lien notices, and we're coming up toward the foreclosure window. So on 12/31, between 12/31 and 1/15, I can formally notify people on a list that they'll be up for foreclosure until, unless they make payment. The foreclosure date would be February 14th. That's just based off of the actual calculations that we have recommended by MMA. So there, I've provided you with a list of those properties. And the reason why we're talking about it now, one, we need to begin thinking about engaging a real estate agent. We need to put that out for, I guess, a bid or something. Yes, sir? I thought you had your hand up.
No, I'll wait until, go some more.
Okay. So I've given you the list of properties. There are some toward the bottom of the list where they're either on payment plans, making some sort of effort. We have a couple that have indicated that they will make payments. So there's some that I would not recommend that we take steps of foreclosure, but there's a handful at the top of the list that we should.
Lien letter status.
Yeah,
So a letter has been sent out and the letter itself was sent out and then unclaimed.
correct.
So it was certified.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, so there's what, 2 U's that were unclaimed. I have tried to figure out if there's a different way of locating these individuals. Haven't come up with anything, but I did go back and look through MMA to figure out what my responsibility for continuing that effort is. And thus far, I've done everything according to MMA that I should be doing to try to locate these individuals.
Those are almost the 2
Yeah,
biggest.
those are at the top list.
I also tried to find out if they were deceased, which they were not, so.
But you know who they are?
Yes, I did not include the names because I wasn't sure that we were
Yeah.
at that point. I have the names.
Are these full-time residents?
I think there's one on the list that may not be.
Well, so what happens next?
So, like I mentioned, we need to think about engaging, a real estate agent.
Okay,
Not me.
my understanding is we foreclose. And then once we foreclose on the property, under the statute, there's three possible things. You negotiate with the prior owner and negotiate a payment and convey the land back to them, in which case the whole statutory thing doesn't apply. Or two, the town decides it wants to keep the property and it gets an appraisal like we are with the 100-acre woods and pays the difference. Or three, you hire a real estate agent. So we do need a real estate agent, but I don't know if I wouldn't put off doing the other stuff pending engaging a real estate agent.
Right, no, I
Yeah.
getting it
You can
on,
foreclose first and hire the real estate agent later, but it would have to be pretty
yeah,
soon.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, the letters will be going
Yeah.
out. So I just wanna make sure that we have it all on our radar, that this is the process.
That's a lot of properties.
Does anybody have any comment on whether we should do this or not? I think yes, but what do you all, anybody comment on it? I think people that are making payments, the treasurer's recommended we, let them continue, and you can always foreclose on them later. But people who are not making payments and are not doing anything are people that want me to pay their share, and I'm not happy with that.
And you've had the similar conversations in the past where
Yeah.
I'm convinced that that's how you're looking at it. People are making good effort, at least communicating.
Oh, yeah.
Expressing, sharing information on challenges.
Mhm.
Okay, but if it's just ignore and
Mhm.
hide,
And there is one individual on the list today that came in and gave us a nice chunk.
Okay.
And indicated that they would be looking to pay it off before
Mm.
the deadline, so.
Okay.
Help me with demand fees from 2023 has been current, I won't guess, I'll just ask you. Number 300. Right, rid of that.
Yeah, so.
Down in the footnotes, so does
It-
that mean,
it- So it was more of, so payment was made, these are leftover fees.
that's what I thought.
So it's one of those things where I look at it and I go. One, okay, we're not gonna foreclose, right? But I also don't wanna charge it off.
Yeah.
Because. That's part of the penalty of not paying on time, right?
Okay, that's what I thought that meant.
Yeah.
What happens if you send out a foreclosure and that is uncollected as well? How do you go?
Unclaimed.
No, when you do the foreclosure, then the town acquires title to the property.
And you don't have to have the person involved.
Well, you kind of do, don't
You'd retain the taxes that are
Yeah,
owed,
yeah.
and then you would, give back the amount that,
if you sold it,
yeah,
yeah.
based off of the
Yeah.
appraisal that comes in.
If you sold it, you would sell it, and then out of the closing, the town would be paid its taxes and costs. The prior owners would be paid the balance. The realtor would be paid his or her commission, and that would come out of the part that the owner's paying to the town.
So you just send a letter to the people who haven't claimed their letters before and say, we've got money for you when you're ready to pick it up?
Well, we should ask, I think we get some legal advice on what we do, what the actual procedure should be with these unclaimed, with these unclaimed letters.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think there's a website online too for unclaimed property.
Don't talk to us, get on the internet.
I got $40 off that site.
Okay,
Alright, so. That's all I wanna mention about that, okay? Alright, so. Now, we'll move on to the actual financial. So it starts off with the bank account position. So this is just, so at the fiscal year end, just so you can remind yourself where we were at the year end and where we are last Friday. So again, do I need to re-explain how the accounts work? We have 2 operating accounts, 2 sweeps. The sweeps clear out the operating accounts. One operating is for anything that walks in the door. The other operating is everything online. Okay. So down below at Winthrop, the fire truck is, so Winthrop, we only get quarterly statements, so we don't have a more current statement other than September 30th. But what I have done is I've added in that $75,000 appropriation that we made and that was deposited in November. Okay, questions? All right, the next page. So this is an exact regurgitation of what I showed you the last time we met. All I've done is I've highlighted the median calculation, which is what my recommendation was. So this shows you 1, 2, and 3. The 3 different options and MMA in the middle, the 3 different options that they had, and I'm taking the median of the calculation. So number 1 was the town policy that we had been currently operating under. Then the bottom was the GFOA's recommendation. So that 828,000 would be the benchmark of, what we should have for an undesignated fund balance. So that's as of June 30th. So the next page, again, the top is, again, just a regurgitation of what you just saw, but the bottom in that box shows you through November what that calculation would be. So you've got the 2 bank balances as of November 30th up at the top. And then below that is everything that we deduct to come down to what the number would be if we were to calculate that today. So we're removing what is anticipated uncollectible accounts. So it's, I believe, 4% of the total real estate revenue that we would, just based historically, that's what I've seen. So that's just a number that just a benchmark. It's not a real number, it's just a benchmark.
If you remove uncollectible accounts, do you need to add in the remaining tax revenues too? Seems like you would.
Yeah, we could.
Okay. But maybe not, I mean, I'm just saying, we're taking out all the uncollectible accounts and
Yeah, and actually,
because they are liquid assets, I believe that your accounts receivable. And, but you can do some reading on that and see if we're
Yeah.
taking out all the uncollectible accounts.
and I would be more inclined not to add in what's not been collected for revenue. I'd be more inclined to not do that and decrease this number based off of the number of months that have transpired. Because I don't.
I
think
would do that because right now you're double dipping us. I think, because everything that's uncollectible isn't in there.
Right,
Or
no,
everything that
I'm
hasn't
not-
been collected, everything that hasn't been collected but will be is not there. Plus, we're deducting another $212,000 of that amount that you say ultimately won't be paid. Now, am I making any sense?
Don't think I'm double dipping.
Okay,
Don't think I'm double dipping, but I do think that there's a fraction of that 212 that could be removed.
yeah, but if there's $1 million that we're still owed, okay? And let's say we were gonna be paid 2 million, and there's $1 million that we're still owed. Out of the 2 million, we weren't gonna be paid 212,000, so out of the $1 million that we're still owed, we wouldn't be paid 100,000. You didn't put in the $1 million,
Mhm.
and you're taking out that 100,000. So that's the double dip.
Um,
Think it over.
Still
But-
not convinced.
Okay, but
Because there's
just
still-
mull on it.
There's
Mull-
still expenditures that would be offsetting that revenue, so I can't say it's a 1-for-1.
No, I'm just saying that to take out all the uncollectibles. Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, and
No,
also,
I
what
agree.
else you should,
I agree.
but also, and I think I've read this in some of the MMA stuff, you also should deduct the budget, that the remaining unspent budget,
Okay,
that also.
I buy that one.
Yes, you include the uncollected taxes, you deduct the remaining unspent
Yep.
balance, and you deduct whatever you think the bad debts is for the entire year, if you want to do that.
Yep.
But
I
just
would
for,
buy into.
just for thought.
Yep, so if you actually look at the next page, this is more of a projection for the rest of the year. You'll see up at the top that I have the cumulative cash flow, which is gonna take your revenue over your expenditures. On an ongoing basis, it rolls it forward. So this is really just to give us an idea of how we're doing in terms of our cash flow, if we were to think that the fund balance is where we should make sure that we don't fall below. So it's one way of looking at a cash flow. I have an alternate method of looking at cash flow in a couple of pages. But this is. Poor Mary Ann's like, no more. But this really is just to kind of give us what we would see the bank balance to be if all of those funds were to be fully expended at some point. In the middle, in September and October, you can see like the road construction went from 919 to 698. That's when we did the expenditure for those roads. And then fire equipment, you can see the 84 to 61. That's when we moved, didn't we move that 20? No. Yeah. So then I've played with the numbers a few different ways, but just gives us an idea of where the bank balance would be.
So then
we have
does that
expenditure.
tell us we have a problem in December?
No.
It tells us that it's not necessarily a problem. It's just if we use the benchmark of that 2 times, and this is where I said there are gonna be times where we need to consider where our cash flows are coming from and when they're coming. So in January, we have a real estate payment due. So where that might be short, we're still 2 times expenditures.
It's
Right.
very dependent on what
Yeah.
month of the year based on
Right.
how the cash is flowing out in various months. Because it
And-
doesn't, things don't all come
But-
due at the same time.
Right,
But Hazel, December's not a problem. What she's saying with this minus 26 is our uncommitted reserve will be $26,000, is projected to be $26,000 less than the standard.
Yeah.
So for example, if you look at December, what she's saying is we could spend all that stuff that you see under reserves. We could spend 698 in December for roads. We could spend 42 for land and building. We could spend 61 for whatever that is, fire equipment. And we would still have in the bank $828,000 after we spent all that money. It's just that's $26,000 less than the optimum amount under our policy that we would like to have that's uncommitted.
We'd have 801,000, and that would.
correct.
Yeah.
26,000.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, yes, 801. That's what I meant to say. I'm sorry. And so these, when you get into in the minus 1 million, that also, tell me, straighten me out on this, just slap me up here if I'm wrong. The minus 1.3 million really isn't a problem either, because the way our accounting program works, if we have a $600,000 road reserve that the town votes, that gets counted as a $600,000 expense in Trio
Yes,
in the month after the budget is passed,
yes.
but no revenues have been collected, no taxes have been collected. So it's counted as an expense, but it really isn't any money that we spent.
Which is why you said July is always the highest
Yeah.
Yeah, if you
month,
count
and
that in
it's a
there, yes.
throwaway anyway, because it's just gonna
Yeah,
sit there as the.
and I would still say that it's not the month in which I'm looking to make road improvements.
Right,
Yes,
right.
Right,
When is it
Well-
really gonna be spent?
right,
And how do we just stay safe in the meantime?
right, right.
well, in July, you could safely spend the balance that you have left over of the previous road reserve.
Yeah, so
You could spend your unspent road reserve from the previous fiscal year in July safely. You just can't spend the road reserve that they just enacted by the town meeting, because that money hasn't been collected yet.
Right.
Would you agree that there's nothing on this chart that should cause us alarm? And if there is, what should we be alarmed about? And tell me why you think that.
So, and I get your point, but I am probably one of the most risk adverse people that you'll come across. I'm not looking to make any expenditures in any sort of magnitude, July and August. Those 2 months, I think are just tight enough to where we should not be spending beyond our means, certainly not making any investments that go
Oh,
into that period, right? I mean, we can see that there's, I've only encountered one August, and I believe that was still a little tight. I've not encountered many to have had a history. So at this point, just looking at straight numbers and based off of the one that I did see, I'm still a little hesitant to say that, just because it's there, we need to go spend it.
Well, okay, we
Would this
can
be
talk,
telling-
it's a discussion for another time, but like we have $698,000 in the road reserve that the town has said to spend on roads
Right now.
right now.
Yeah.
And that money, I think, could be spent in April, May, June, and July.
Okay.
Okay, so
So
where you said you wouldn't want to spend any major
Is it
money.
July and August?
Okay,
now,
it's,
so would you then be talking with Shannon and there's work that needs to be done in August that's gonna be, $400,000 on the road, and you would counsel her not to do that then? Yeah.
if I have a road
Right.
reserve, if I have
Yeah.
$400,000, if I have
So-
$400,000 in last year's.
In
road
last
reserve,
year's.
There's not a problem.
Right, then,
Now, I can't pay that out of this year's road reserve unless I want to go do a tax anticipation note, because the
Right.
money hasn't been collected by the town yet.
Right. Right.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
So,
Yeah, so, and again, there's expenditures that happened in the beginning of the year that we might have been able to push off and wait a little bit before that payment had been made. Would that have alleviated, say, if we had a project come up? Yeah. I mean, there's always ways possibly that we could get a little bit more stretch in the liquidity.
but
It just needs, we have to talk about. it. But those are the months in which we need to be talking about.
But,
Thanks.
okay. And just one last thing, and then I'm gonna be quiet. In July and August, let's say whenever we book, and you say expend, because that's what Trio says, I'm gonna call it book.
Okay.
Whenever we take $1 million out of reserve accounts.
Yep.
The $1 million that they appropriate, and we put that in the reserve account, that shows up in Trio as $1 million expense, but we didn't take a nickel out of the bank to pay any of that. Okay.
Yep.
So just keep
And
that in mind when
I-
we're worried about these, when we're saying a big expense month.
Yeah.
If we're saying the expense are transfers
Yeah, if.
in
you
our books,
Look at
that
the very
ain't,
bottom,
we ain't paying that, okay.
look at the very bottom, I said, those highlighted areas
Uh-huh.
represents realized changes in the fund balance, which is then taking out of cash, but not needed to be presented in the adjustments.
Okay.
And I've also, in another table, says the same thing, it's not cash that has left
Okay, good.
the account yet.
Yeah, a couple of things.
Yep.
So you've got only one in the adjusted bank balance, you've only got one that's a negative, right? Even though there's a lot of red down there, it just
Yeah.
happens to be a color that you chose.
Yeah, I know, it's,
But one is a negative, and that's not an overdrawn account, that's just talking about, as Henry said, the way things being reported.
Yeah.
So my bigger question, I just wanted to clarify that, because of course, it's not an overdrawn account.
Right.
Barring some kinds of major change about the way we do business, or roads become permanent at some point in the future or something, don't ever need repair, cycles like this are most likely going to continue. So the context of how we're spending our money and our annual spend cycles are gonna continue to, understanding and having that context is what lends us to look at this and say nothing to be overly concerned about. At the same time, you being risk averse, is there anything that you would recommend? So suppose we had an emergency, major emergency expenditure in July or August, something.
Mhm.
That's where I think that risk averse nature would say, we are kind of in a little bit of a bind, other than unspent reserve in
Mhm.
other accounts. anything you might recommend as a, hey, if we were in a position to do it, we might want to
But-
pump this up.
The truck falls through the Tempe Bridge.
Our bank balance in August was
Sudden.
not minus $485,000.
Right.
No, and that's,
Right.
yeah, that's what he
That's
just
what
we
mentioned.
just talked
So,
All right.
so, yes, there are things. So if we consider the three biggest expenditures that the town has, is schools, right, the county, and then roads. Right, so if, say, something happens with roads and bridges and
Mhm.
then we can look for either the county pushing it off to the end of when they need to be paid. Maybe we can talk to the school about giving us a little bit of leeway, right?
Okay.
So,
You mean like if we had to buy an emergency bridge?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
there's a huge,
If we had, but wait,
Flooded.
if we had to buy an emergency bridge. And an emergency bridge is something in the neighborhood of, let's say it costs $400,000. I'm just making this up, okay? And it's not, it's gonna be a loan. I'm telling you, that's the only thing it's gonna be, a loan if we don't have a bridge account and a bridge reserve account that has $400,000 in it.
Yeah.
Cause you can't buy that, you can't do that out of tax flow, cash flow. You can't do a tax anticipation note for that much more. You could do a tax anticipation note to cover your uncollected reserves. But if something like that happened, then the town would have to borrow money to fix it, which is what you have to do if you buy a new house and you're a person. Not too many people go to their reserve account and pay cash for their houses. They take out a loan. And if we want to tell everybody you pay more taxes each year and put it in a reserve account to pay for the bridge whenever it needs to be replaced, then we could do that, just like we do with the roads. It's kind of a policy choice. Who should hold the money? And when should the taxes, now the taxes are gonna be paid somewhere. If you take out a loan, the taxes are gonna go up in the subsequent years. But that's that's just what I think about big emergencies. You're not gonna
Yeah.
pay for big
Should be sitting
emergency
with a
out of
pile of
this.
money, right?
I was gonna say, I think it also depends on the amount of money per purchase. I mean, if we're
Yes,
talking about
yeah.
pushing something off, like the
Yeah.
county tax, you
Yeah.
can, reading the footnote at the
Yeah.
bottom, you can actually push the county tax off by another 2 months without, until you pay a fee.
Mhm.
So even though it's due September 1st, you can actually hold off until November 1st to make sure that it gets paid.
Mhm.
After November 1st, you pay an interest rate.
Yeah, which we should. We should ride that as
Yes.
long as we can
Yes.
without paying
We've
interest.
discussed this.
Yes. we should.
Yes.
No, we should.
Absolutely.
Okay.
we should. Should we? Anything?
Just don't forget to put it on your calendar and miss the last day.
I know.
These spreadsheets are bad about it.
I'll put it on a big calendar.
All right, so the next slide is the capital reserve funds. And I have a road reconciliation down at the bottom, because I know that's always of interest, just to kind of show what the, you know, what the total appropriation, and it's really nothing any different from the numbers that we were just looking at on the slide before. So a total of, 1.27 million in total CapEx, if you want to cross the line. 400 and roughly 30,000 of that is the fire truck, which is already over at Winthrop. So then if we take out the CapEx that was already previously transferred, if we did a full expenditure beyond what I'll show you in some subsequent slides, it's 287,000 to fully expend it beyond what we're looking at that I've projected. So not really sure beyond what, looking at this, it has all the appropriations before, I hadn't made those, so those are all in now. So these are all the actual numbers, if you're looking at the orange line that has the ending positions. Any questions on that?
Did you make the font bigger next time?
Not at all. Yes,
I think print them on, for next time, print them on 11 by 17 paper. You show me your copier handles that.
yeah, I know.
I mean, not
Page four, yeah.
14, now 11 by 17.
Oh
And
my
it'll
gosh.
be, it'll be,
We have
It'll
to
be
get
big.
that, we have to get that paper from Winthrop though.
I'll buy you some.
Last time I never used it.
I thought he was giving it the 11 by 17. All right, any on the capital reserve funds, any questions on that?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, so next is the trio. So typically you guys get the expense revenue, and I know that Shannon does a great job each time going through, you know, highlighting. Okay, well, I mean, so like, you know, previous meetings, I know she goes through. it.
Usually does a great job.
Yeah, she,
Sometimes.
oh my gosh, it's excellent, quick.
So forward.
All right, so what I've done is I've given you a current year-to-date through November, what the budget is, what our remaining budget is, and a comparison to the prior year. So outside of like Community Resilience Program and FEMA up at the top in revenues, those are two new line items that we added. FEMA was the, what did we say that was, 2024 snowstorm?
Yes, no, 23.
23?
December.
Okay, 23, December 23.
Mhm.
So we have those monies in there, so I added two of those line items, that's why you don't see them really budgeted. Revenues under the general administration, the reason why that is below what it was last year. So there's 4,000 in interest that I have not booked into this year yet. That's part of that 13. And that's just a matter, I've been feverishly trying to get all of the reconciliations caught up. I've gotten them at least up through June, so that way I can satisfy the auditors on that. I need to finish carrying it forward and getting the rest of those reconciliations caught up and moved over. We have had an increase in motor vehicle excise, which I'm just gonna attribute to higher cost of vehicle. Let's see, there was an adjustment in the prior year of 22,000 that I'm still trying to chase down. I'm not sure why the adjustment showed up in revenue. It's another one of those that I've been coming across little things in previous years that look like they were booked into accounts maybe they should not have been. So I've been doing some adjustments along the way. Anything on here that stands out to you that you need to ask about? Because I know that, like I said, I know Shannon talks about the expenses all the time.
So we're, at this point, we were about 41.5% into the year.
Correct, yep. So, and that's why you see the red highlights of the percentages.
Mm.
I would say under the elections line, it says that we're at 54.4. So I would almost expect that we're gonna go over budget on that.
Yeah.
Simply because we'll have a primary coming up in June.
Mm.
And if we consider that most of the amounts that were spent here is gonna be identical to the amounts that we're gonna expend in June, we'll go over budget.
So RSU 38 looks like it's right on.
Yeah, RSU
yeah.
38, I mean, yeah, I mean.
It's always,
it's a-
it's
a
always,
monthly-
it's always gonna be on. It's a set.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's
a
just
set-
at 40, it's just highlighted. So
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
didn't know if
Oh,
there's something.
This
that's
is
okay.
41.6 and this is 41.7,
Seven.
so
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm really technical.
And I love that.
Let's see, anything else, the county taxes, that's already fully expended, so it technically should be 100%, it's just a matter of, you know, what we budgeted for.
The Cobbossee Watershed District has broken it up into 3 payments, so we're 2 payments through so far.
Any questions on that? Yeah, so, oh, yeah. Okay. So the next slide, so I've shown you this before, but what I did the previous time is I only gave you just the quarters. So I expanded it out for the next months that we have not encountered, again, just a different cash flow look. based off of, what I project the bank balances to be, what our cumulative cash flow is based off of our revenues and expenditures. So you can see kind of each of those going through. You can see at the end of the year, I would expect to have cash flow of 295,000. Now, if we were to go ahead and take all of the CapEx and fully expend it, we'd be looking at around $8,000, $9,000 for cash flow, which, then we used all of our revenues, right? Mhm.
I had turned the page, I'm sorry.
We did not do that.
Andrew's done. Okay. Questions on that? Hazel's still studying, so I'm gonna give her a second.
It's hard to get at walking in.
It's hard to what?
To just get at walking in.
Yeah. I mean, certainly you can mull it over if you've got questions.
I know what.
You know where to find it. So yeah, so shall we move on? All right, so the last thing I do want to talk about is banking relationships and the possibility of doing some short-term investments. Short-term, low risk. So the first page that you see, I've talked to our bank. And I've gotten rates on CDs, 1 month CD, a 3 month CD, and 6 month CD. At this point, I'm not comfortable with doing a 6 month CD. So I've just given you a breakdown of what either a 1 month or a 3 month CD would look like. So the other thing about what you're looking at is right now, the way that our accounts are set up is we earn 0.85% in interest, which is actually above the 0.45 that normal businesses receive. So if we were to switch our account structure to what's called analysis with positive pay, and I'll explain that, we would then earn 2% just by moving over to analysis. Analysis is a form of a banking product where most businesses are situated, and what they do is they count up how many transactions you have, either how many deposits, how many checks, how many ACHs, and they base it off of pennies for each one of those. So it's an analysis. It's really no more than just that simple. However, there's no charge like that government entities receive. So the charge that we would get would be for the positive pay. Positive pay is a type of fraud prevention. So right now, the way that we operate, we are fairly exposed to anybody taking an ACH presentment and grabbing money. So it could happen at any point, and I believe that it could happen based off of where we're a small town, nobody's looking. Fraudsters kind of depend on that. So anybody could at any point, a fraudster, try to grab money. I understand from our banking rep that it has happened in Jay, and I believe to the tune of maybe $1 million. So there is a real risk. So there is a charge for receiving positive pay. So I've also given you two, if you look toward the back, and it says at the top, Androscoggin Bank. There's two different views for the analysis. The one that I am recommending, the only difference between the two is that there is a line item called courier service. Right now, when we have what our policy says $2,500. Shannon usually has to drive out to Jay to make the deposit. There is a risk involved with that. There's mileage, there's time. There's a risk,
Yeah.
weather, especially in the winter. So Androscoggin has a courier service to where they will send a courier to pick up our deposit on a weekly basis, and we would get charged $22. To me, that seems like a reasonable trade-off. But I've had her give me the two different views, just in case anybody was somebody was reluctant on having somebody else take the cash. I believe it's gonna be an Auburn truck.
So that's the 151 versus the 239,
Correct.
which is, pardon me, more than $22.
Well, it's $22 each visit, so per week.
Oh, so 4 times,
Yeah,
or
per week.
whatever.
And
4.3
I did
times.
ask her, I said, we did not have to do it every week. You know, I could just call and say that they would,
Shannon drives to the bank. We pay her 70 cents a mile.
Sure.
That's $17. That's $17 per deposit that we're paying now, plus an hour of the town manager's time.
Plus the risk of putting her on the
So don't
road.
worry about the $22.
No,
I mean,
I know.
yeah, nobody
I
should
was
worry
just
about the
trying to
$22. Yeah.
understand
Oh,
the
okay.
money.
Because
the
it's
number.
$17 for the mileage reimbursement every time we go right now.
Plus she's getting paid for being out on the road and not.
Yeah,
working.
that's what I'm saying. It's an
Yeah.
hour of her time at least,
Right?
plus
You could be at Your
$17.
desk working.
So that's worth at least $19, isn't it?
I think that's a no-brainer.
Yes,
Mm,
that would be a good one to do.
so, and so on that front page, what I've done is I've kind of given you the analysis, the difference between the current and the proposed. At this point, because of where the 1 month CD rate is, it would be below the 2% that we would receive by going with analysis. But I put it on there just so you can see
Yeah.
it. So the 3 month CD, there's an option for that, that's at 2.75. At this point, I would only be comfortable doing that now, but making sure that those funds have been released in order to achieve any springtime work that we need.
The, Lynn, your number down here, I think for this, your number for the sweep account interest is a monthly number, $1,826.17 a month.
Yeah,
Your number for the 3 month CD, I believe if you do the math, that's for the whole 3 months.
yes,
So it's not 46. So
Yeah.
if we're gonna do it monthly, we ought to do a month. It should be so much a month, or you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
You get to change
Yeah.
the interest rate from time to time, or you just have to pick the same interest rate each time,
So the CD would be locked in for the 3 months. If
Or a
we
given
chose a
CD.
3 month CD.
right?
So you have to remove all or none.
Okay,
If you remove it early,
right.
there is a penalty.
Right.
And I've given you the
Yeah.
sheet that shows what the penalties would be.
Right.
But again, I would not be comfortable investing anything or putting anything into a CD unless I knew that whatever expenditures we had coming out,
Yeah.
were gonna be covered.
A 3/4% spread, I'd suggest is almost not worth thinking about. Just leave it in the bank.
Right.
I mean, if all we get is a 3/4% spread on
Yeah.
what you're gonna move into the CD.
Yeah, so if you look at.
Which is what you're showing here, so.
Right. So the sweet spot would be the 6 month. The 6 month CD.
Well,
what we have
yeah.
Right now.
Oh,
But
yeah,
this is,
6 months would
a
make- yeah, that'd
6 month
be a
CD
2%.
is not something that I'm comfortable with doing at this point.
Yeah, and you can't do partial withdrawals according to these guys, and so you end up losing 3 months interest if you take it out early.
Correct.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
But we're better off by, if I take this down from 3,000 to 1,000, we're better off by about $36,000 a year, it looks to me, just by making this change. That puts $36,000 a year into our bank at the end of the year. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you could consider it to be more if you factor in.
Yeah. All the extra work we can give the town
that.
manager because she's not having to go to the bank. Does anybody think that this is something that Lynn should not do? No? Okay. All right.
Perfect sense.
The good analysis, thank you.
Yeah.
Does that conclude your,
That includes my show.
okay, I have another, but I have a question.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Did you have any idea this was gonna be this much fun when we hired you?
Oh, yeah, no, I totally did. Anything with numbers, so much fun.
Good, good.
Okay, item 9B, discussion of winter maintenance for White Road.
All right.
Yay.
So at the request of the select board last meeting, this was added as an agenda item for this meeting. So we had a couple of residents come in and request that White Road be paved. Or excuse me,
Plowed.
plowed. I keep getting a couple words mixed up. House, white, plowed, paved. 4 letters, 5 letters, they're all the same. So, so I went on to the main DOT viewer to look up the road, and it's currently listed as a townway, summer maintenance only. So what does that mean? I reached out to MMA Legal, and asked them, about the situation. I sent them a screenshot of the road, asked for any kind of insight regarding that. They said that I need to determine if it is a townway or a public easement. Because even though it says townway with summer maintenance only, it kind of indicates that it could be a public easement. However, it has the word townway in it. And so she actually recommended that I reach out to our town attorney, which I have not done yet. Instead, this past week or two, I went down a rabbit hole of looking through a lot of historical documents to try to find any kind of language that established White Road at any point in time. With that, we also found that in state statutes, it's 23 MRSA section 2953, which is the closing of winter roads. That it's a process that needs to be done every 10 years on a town road. So if there were no residents down that road, like winter residents, then you could technically go ahead and close it. In these documents and going through it, I found a document from 2001. And so that just basically said, it was Article 46 from the town meeting. It was in the warrant to see if the town will vote that an order of municipal officers for the closing of White Road in winter under 23 MRSA section 2953 shall be a determination of said closing. And so I was going to send that into the attorney and see what they'd have to say as far as a final determination. Because when I reached out to MMA, they said that back prior years ago, whether roads were discontinued or abandoned, the language was very loose. And so trying to understand what that process looked like. Again, going back to the determination of whether it's a townway or whether it's a public easement. If it's a public easement, the town has does not have a maintenance requirement through the winter. Or any kind of like that. But if it is a townway, we must keep up that road. If you drive down White Road, it hasn't been kept in the best condition because it's been historically maintained only for summer maintenance. And with those residents, they moved in this past summer. So now we have year-round residents there. But my next step, so I don't have a final answer on that, is to still continue diving back as early as the development of roads for the town of Wayne.
Oh, boy.
Because historically, it looks like, I mean, that road has always been there. And so I've got to go back into the original description, or the select board is gonna probably have to make a decision as far as how we want to go about this. If you would like to have it plowed or not. In any case, I think that it will need to come to the town meeting in June. And there's some other questions that I still haven't answered yet, so I cannot answer everything at the moment. I've got some things still on the table.
Yeah.
Did you have a question for me? Comment?
It's New England.
It-
Welcome to
Yeah.
New
In
England.
2023, there was actually a commission established by the legislature to go over discontinued and abandoned roads. They're still working in the place, and I met with the DOT director for local roads last Thursday, where we went over all of our roads, and we did identify another road that we currently have that was still listed as a private road, and so we found that documentation today, and so I've got to send that in to make sure that that's updated. But the same thing with this, his documentation that he had for White Road dates back to 1990, and it's always been the same. And nothing's been updated,
Well,
so just trying to find that. If we do, keep it as a town way. Again, I have some additional questions, go ahead.
yeah, it's listed on the map as a townway with summer maintenance only. Okay. The 2001 article was designed to terminate winter maintenance of a townway. The fact that that action was taken indicates that at least the town at that time thought it was a town way, because if it wasn't a town way, they wouldn't take that action to terminate the winter maintenance of the town way. I think,
My
and they,
interpretation is that there were no residents down there.
it does, well, then they would not have terminated summer maintenance under that section.
Winter.
They would have a winter maintenance, they would have abandoned the road under another statute.
Yeah,
That statute that's cited in the article,
yes,
the 2001 article, is the statute for suspending or stopping winter maintenance on a town way. And certain things have to be done that weren't done in 2001
11.
or 2011, okay, 2011. And even if it was done in 2011, that statute says the determination is good for 10 years. And then at the end of 10 years, it needs to be redetermined.
That's what I'm saying, in 2011,
11.
nothing else, I couldn't find
Anything
anything
after
since
that, yeah.
2011.
Yeah.
But again, that's why I'm just trying to find
Yeah.
any kind of historical documents that establish it as a town way, or if it's just a public easement. Because a public easement would allow a town to go in and still do maintenance or have accessibility to, say, the river or the
We could-
pond that's down
Yeah.
there. Pickerel Pond, I
That's
believe,
it.
if they needed to have it, or if the fire department needed to get down to it, it could be a public easement.
Easement.
Mhm.
So if it was not, I think I'm getting a lot of things, coming together. If they treated it as a town way, it was probably town way, number one. Number two, if it was 2001 and now we're talking about a 10-year.
No, it was 2011.
2011.
Right, I was wrong.
2011,
It-
it needs to be
It's gone-
updated every
it's gone
10 years.
anyway.
It seems like we,
Yeah, it's gone anyway.
right,
Yeah, and if it was a town easement, that warrant article, I'm sorry, if it was a public easement,
Mhm.
that warrant article would have been unnecessary.
right.
And that's just the way it kind of looks. Now,
That's what it sounds to me.
yeah,
But to go in and plow that is not simply saying, let's plow that road. It's, let's plow that road and back up,
no,
because we
Well-
still have to put some kind of a turnaround in there, right?
okay, we could take up to this town meeting. And that's why we should figure it out. If we determine that we don't want to or couldn't terminate winter maintenance, because let's say, just for argument's sake, it is a town way. And we can't terminate winter maintenance to those people's houses. Everything past that on that road are summer residents only. And you can terminate winter maintenance on a portion of a town road. So we could terminate winter maintenance. It would take an action by the next town meeting of everything past their house. And then we would have to talk to the plowing experts about what you can do if you only plow up to their house with respect to depositing the snow on the road past their house and turn around
turn
in their
around.
driveway. Or whatever. Somebody has to go and figure out what that is. But as far as this year, I think they got an issue that needs to be taken care of this year. And I think we need to confirm with legal counsel, that is, we got to determine how that road should be plowed with, and I presume it would be plowed with a 1-ton vehicle. And then we got to find out if we can hire somebody to do it, because I reckon everybody's probably pretty busy now already for the winter. We got a plow expert here. Is that, would you use a small truck to plow that? right?
Would be the only option.
Yeah.
Mm,
And so we'd have to find somebody. It doesn't, it could be, it could be Mark if he and the purchasing agent, road commissioner work something out, but it doesn't necessarily have to be Mark who plows that road.
So I say it could be done with a small truck and that's
Yeah.
as it exists today.
Yeah,
In April, it might not be plowable.
well, then, yeah. And there is a provision, there's a statute, again, it takes town action of abandoning a road altogether. It's a different statute, but we need to look into that also. But when you abandon a road, you have to pay the people money because you're decreasing the value of their property. That's in the law. There's an appraisal process and so that would include these people and all the other part-year residences that are past them. And I don't know what those are. How many there are there?
There's one.
Just one? Okay.
They're relative.
That's just. Four.
Well,
Seemed like there was more when I got driven down there today.
oh, okay.
They make five.
Okay.
So
but-
Henry, what's your take on, I mean, the road was not abandoned, but the winter maintenance was stopped
Mhm.
under the premise that there were no year-round houses on it. So what is the town's responsibility if somebody decides to put a year-round house on a road that was previously
I think if the road is posted, or if the road is determined to be no winter maintenance, then it's no winter maintenance, and people buy their house subject to that condition on their roadway. And the statute says that you can rescind that, and it takes town action again. It can be rescinded during the 10-year period. Like if somebody bought a house or something else happened and they came to the town and they said, we think you should resume winter maintenance on this road, that you suspended it within the 10-year period, you could do that. But it would take town action to do that. But that's why when it was suggested, and it may be true, it makes sense, it was suggested that it's impossible to terminate winter maintenance on a road that has a house on it. I don't know if that's true or not. That's something we've got to find out. Because if it had already been terminated and somebody built a house there, they wouldn't get plowing. It would be just like buying a house on a private road.
right.
This is a house that they had all along?
That was,
They converted to year round?
no, there was
Or house that
I think they had a trailer or mobile home there and they built a house. Was that
Last
the deal?
year.
Yeah.
Last
And
year.
they moved there.
Okay.
I don't think they were living there year round, and they built a place and moved there year round.
So
And-
what is she to do right
And if
now?
if it had been terminated correctly, and if that was still in effect, we were within the period of time, I don't think they'd be entitled to anything. But if it's not terminated correctly, heck, actually, we got an obligation to plow the whole thing. Which would be not good.
So I'm gonna be seeking legal counsel.
Yeah.
on this now. Mhm. But that's all I've got on that.
Yeah.
And you identified one other potential situation that could put the town at risk?
No, I think we found the answer to
Found
that.
a solution for,
Yeah.
I think it was 2018. They made the road, they adopted the road, it was.
Yeah.
Fuller Road.
Yeah.
Fuller Road used to be a-
Fuller Road, and it was 2019, right? Yeah, but
Yeah.
the town did adopt it, so that's okay.
So we found that language.
We don't have other roads that have been marked as no winter maintenance?
No,
No,
I'd have to go through and look. There have been a lot of different changes to different roads, that we've been reading through the historical documents, but White Road is primarily summer maintenance that had the question.
I
I'll
think
have to
that
go
was the
through-
only one on his map that was summer
Well-
maintenance, so.
Yeah, I'll have to go through,
Yeah.
I mean, now that I'm looking through the historical documents,
Yeah.
anything in the last 10 years, or, I mean, yes, previously, if it hadn't been, renewed,
Mhm.
then we could relook at those roads or just do an, assessment of our roads. And the director did recommend that we kind of go around and assess all of our roads and check on the speed limits, check on, the maintenance of them and see if there's anything that does need to get closed up for the winter time or, you know, we could do that or decommissioning or, of roads, discontinuing. So I did meet with the, I don't know if you want to move into the, yeah, I was gonna say, town manager. I did meet with the infrastructure committee this morning, and we did go over, that and some of the things that we're gonna start looking at. And that includes, the different roads around the town, that may have maybe one house down it. Or, summer residents, but.
Okay, are we squared away on that? Public comment section, public comment? Town manager report?
So. Prepare this, but for the comprehensive plan, I did advertise on the town website for the comprehensive plan and opening of seats. I don't have a deadline, and so I'd like to get some guidance from the select board as far as when you would like me to advertise that we receive applications no later than.
But do you think we could act on that in the second meeting in January? You got 3 weeks until the next meeting, which is the first meeting in January. Then if we got the things in a week before the second meeting, that would be 4 weeks. Do you think that's long enough? And is that something we might want to do, or do we want to do it later?
Well, the holidays do complicate things a little bit,
Yeah.
So maybe later would be,
Later's good.
First meeting of February.
yeah.
First meeting in February, we should be appointing a committee so they can get started on their work.
Yeah,
Okay, so you're
Oh,
doing the second
so-
meeting of January then?
right.
The second meeting of January, we want to have everything in by.
Okay.
Which is another week that's 5 weeks from now.
Okay, so would the same date apply for buildings committee? I haven't advertised for that yet, but
Yeah.
you did approve a charge,
Yes.
so I'll do the same thing.
And the building committee is less of I think there's some urgency to the planning or to the comprehensive plan committee, because they need to start on their work
Mhm.
to get done on time. The building committee, I have less of a sense of urgency on, but we could do it then at the same time.
And I did meet with the infrastructure committee, which consisted primarily of the roads committee members. They did all choose to stay on the committee, which I am appreciative of, and we do have one open seat on that. We have potentially one candidate for that so far, but I haven't heard from them yet. But we have a tentative meeting date. I've got to reach out to one of the members for January 5th. And then once I confirm that with everyone, then we'll be posting an agenda online for that.
Question about the comprehensive plan committee, is that just for the advertisement, just ad hoc seats? Or is that even for seats from the various boards and commissions and such?
Her advertisement was for the ad hoc, it was for the general seats, the open seats for the community members, but I think you should communicate with the chairman of each of these boards and say we would like to have their nominees at the same time, their appointments at the same time.
Thank you. Coming up for the holidays, would the select board be opposed to closing at noon on Christmas Eve? Or no? Okay, what about noon on New Year's Eve?
That's
I
fine.
am saying,
Okay, so I'll advertise for holiday hours. We'll be closed on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. If there's anything else. That's all I've got for right now.
Board member reports?
I got one brief one, our dam committee meeting, finally had a meeting. Our dam committee is, very concerned about the condition of the lake. And we're very concerned about the condition of the dam, being as it was built in 1930s. It had some major modifications about 20 years ago, but we're now down to $13,000. And but that would be worth capturing, that's for the minutes. We're down to $13,000 for the commission, for the fund.
So you're talking about the pollution control device?
Right.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's yeah.
Yeah, that dam.
That dam. And there also are two, there's a committee with two members that are new, the agriculture committee with the deputy commissioner, and it's barely very recent to get her job, and the woman in the DEP. And they've been asked to look around for funding sources and things, and we're just getting started, but we're ready to get going on it, and the committees with the Doug was talking about are gonna take up the matter, the longer term uses of the committee, but we're lower and lower. We're down to 3 years, 4 years, maybe only 2 years with the money left over. And we're not gonna be able to go back. That was provided by the power companies as a result of their contribution to really the big, what was that? This permanent chemical that was killing the loons. They were was really concerned for that, and we're not gonna be able to go back to that. There's only one left.
Okay, thank you, Lloyd. Anybody else? Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? I'll make a motion to adjourn. I can do that.
Second it.
Good.
All in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
All right.
That was a good report, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we're out of here at
thanks.